And I want to say welcome to this webinar. I'm Tim Jacobs, and I'm the District Superintendent for EFCA West. And I want to introduce Sochi Kachon. You guys probably know her. She's the one with the very nice lake background there. And Bob Osborne, who's also our Director of Church Health, is on the call. Not sure if any of our other staff is on right now, but we have Alex Rivero, our Director of All People Ministry, and then Linda Bishop, who's our Director of Women Leaders. So it's great to be with you today. I hope you guys had a great Easter despite being scattered. It's amazing to see how everyone's making the most of the situation, and I hope that you guys, your families, are doing well. Let me pray for us real quick, and we'll jump in here. God, thank you for the opportunity to bring Dave and Philip to us. Thank you that even in the midst of unpredictable, totally unforeseen times, that the church is rising up, that the church is adapting, and that the gospel is going forward. And I pray for each one of these men and women on the call that you would encourage their spirits, that you would lift them, that you would give them strength for the journey and perseverance. And we look forward to how you're going to work in the midst of this challenge. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Well, we are privileged to have two guests with us today to lead us through taking our small groups online to be able to have a great experience, to increase engagement or to enhance engagement. And obviously, just from the amount of participants we have here, this is a pretty important topic. And so I also just want to, just housekeeping as always, make sure if you're not talking that you're muted. And then we'll hopefully have time as we go to do some Q&A, and you can always use the chat box function there, and you can type in some stuff there. So I want to introduce our presenters today, and they are from North Coast Church, and we're very privileged to have them. Dave Enns is pastor of life groups and adult ministry at North Coast, and Dave has been part of North Coast training. So they've done this webinar. You guys have done this in a variety of different contexts, but you did this especially for EFCA West. And so I want to say thank you to you for taking time out of your schedule to give us kind of our own private or semi-private, at least EFCA West webinar on this subject. So Dave, and you got Philip with you as well. So thank you very much, and I'll turn it over to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Tim. And it is so great to be with you, see your faces. I think I see all of you, and you guys look good on screen. I don't care what anybody says. So you're doing good. Yeah, my name's Dave, and I've been at North Coast for 30 years. Give you a little context of what's going on. And started as a high school pastor, no college ministry, launched that, did all that for 13 years, got to see some exciting things happen during those times and growth. We were a church of 700 then at a Seventh-day Adventist church, and I think a lot of you guys know our story. Now, I've been doing groups at North Coast for the last 17 years. When I made that transition, it makes sense to me. I'm like, is that really a real pastor doing groups? And have never turned back, because it is where the people connect, build relationships. So key and fun stuff here. And Bob Osborne, it's good to see you over the years and continue here. So good to see you, buddy. So I am also joined with one of my coworkers and good friend, Philip Byers. He has been, I've known him for the last 5 years in ministry and groups, and a campus pastor, groups pastor, done a church plant, and now he's been on with us since August, and he's really, we're working hand in hand, and he's really helping us handle the operations part of our groups. And so this will be our third one in the last week like this, and we have just loved doing this and being able to do kind of an overview of what we've done, because we're experts. We've been doing this for 4 weeks, so we know all kinds of stuff. But we're like everybody else trying to figure it out. But we feel like we have had some good success. In fact, we've been really surprised how people have responded to going online. And there's incentives there that have never been there before, obviously now. And so, but Philip and I, we've walked through this with our team in the midst of that. And so We're again excited to be here. So what we're going to do, say hi, Philip. You want to tell them where you're from? Like, you're not from San Diego now, but where are you from? So
yeah, thanks, Dave. Hey, so good to see so many of you, and I love seeing the church come together. So encouraged by each of your faces. I know you're doing some incredible work in your church as well. So yeah, thanks for having us on. And yeah, I'm from Texas. So I've lived in Texas my entire life and moved to San Diego in August. So it has been a culture shock in the best way. In fact, this is a Torrey Pines picture of a hike we did. So anyways, just getting as much beach as I can right now as I'm stuck in my house. So
exactly. We're really just in our houses with blank walls. And so we've acted like we really are in San Diego and paradise over here. So
I'm actually in my youngest son's bedroom, and there's like bunk beds and toys all over the place. So it's the exact opposite of the background. So.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So again, context is everything, right? How many of you already have groups online? Let me just see a raise of hands. Okay. So most of you are already doing that. You're going in that direction. And so Philip will do a lot of moderation for us in the midst of this as you guys have questions that come up, because we don't just have our agenda. We'll give you our overview of what we did, and then we can hit on a bunch of questions there. And he's also going to drop a website in there right now that'll take you to our website, and it gives the 5 things that we'll hit on that we've done. We said 5 steps we've taken to move our groups online. And my guess is you guys have for the most part, done all of these. And so I want to find out what your questions are too. So you can even start dropping those questions in there right away. But I'll give you, here's our 5 things that we've done. And communicate to our church. Yeah, that's a concept. And we just started with that very quickly. Hey, what's going on? Bring in the calm that God is good. He's at work. And what's going to be normal is we're going to still be the church. We're still going to care for people. So that went out from Chris Brown to all of our church right away. Then communicate and prepare your group leaders and hosts. And so I'll dive into that. So that was quickly, okay, leaders and hosts, let's communicate to you. And then we created prepare your people to go to church online. And again, we're saying everything's normal. Well, everything's not normal. What is normal? What's normal is we're going to still care for each other. And we're just checking in, are you okay? And then we're going to move our groups to online. And then we made it really try to do all we can to make it simple for people to sign up. And then I think most of you know that we're a sermon-based curriculum. And if you've not been that and you've been looking for the opportunity to do that, this could be the time for you to be able to start doing that. And that just has worked real effectively for us. Let me give you, again, just real quick context for us too. We are a sermon-based lecture lab model. We hear the sermon on the weekend and groups talk about the questions during the week. But they're not just Bible study questions. They're questions on building relationships that tie in the sermon-based stuff. So there's this flow or rhythm that we believe we create by writing the questions. They're not purely just Bible study, but how to get people to interact. And that remains the same as we're launching the groups. So we're also a 3-quarter schedule. So our groups meet for 10 weeks, fall, winter, and spring. And those are 3 on-ramps that we have for our groups. Do we make exceptions? Sure, if we need to, we make exceptions. But generally speaking, that's a flow that we have. And in reality, this happened right at the exact perfect time for us because we were in between our winter quarter and spring quarter. And when this all went down, and there's a whole group of people, whether they're really going to adhere to the stay-at-home issues, we didn't need to say, well, the church is going to make a decision. We just said, care for your people. And so we were actually 2 or 3 weeks off. We actually extended to be 3 weeks off in the midst of the winter quarter and spring quarter. And that's what allowed us to be able to prepare our leaders to launch our spring quarter. And now we're in our 2nd week, and we'll continue on through the end of May is our plan. So that's our context of what we're doing and what we set up for it and how it works itself out. So communicate. Here's the other thing is this the opportunity as we began to think about this, and Philip and I sat down, and even with the staff is this the opportunity to launch your small groups to the next level and start something brand new? Maybe. I don't know. Is this a chance to improve some things you have? I think so. I think it can be. But those were not our pervading issues. Our pervading issues is we need to care for our people and make sure they're connected. And so our big communication that we started with is, are you doing okay? We're here for you. And we sent that message out to our people. We said that our primary job here is to not create a new evangelistic opportunity to reach the community. And for all those people that are isolated, obviously that's odd, even in the sense of what's going on. But we just need to shepherd our people and care for them. And so will more people come to know Jesus? Will more people get connected? Yeah, we hope that can be possible. But our goal was not to get everybody online. Our goal was to make it easy for anybody that wants to get online can. And that's the significant difference, because people are like, well, we're not ready for that. And we're like, okay, that's okay. But we're still going to do that. We're going to still move forward. Philip, share the example of the couple that you talked about the first week, and then what happened a week or so later.
Yeah, so as Dave mentioned, I work with the ops side of our teams, but I also work with our young married and young family groups on our Vista campus. And so one of the couples, I was trying to grab coffee with them, and I had it scheduled for that like third week of March. And so right when the shelter in place hit, it was like that day I was supposed to grab coffee with them. So I shot him a message and said, hey, can we just reschedule or set up a Zoom call and we can talk? And so this leader couple is in their 60s. And so they lead one of our young married groups. They're a mentor couple for us. And so they were like, no, video's not good. It's not a way to connect. And so they were like, hey, would you want to come to our office? And so I'm like, no, I really don't. I'm sorry. And so they were like, well, let's just reschedule. So I was like, okay, great. So here's a leader that wouldn't even meet me, one of their pastors, on a video call. So fast forward 4 weeks later, as we've kind of done some of our training, which we'll talk more about, this leader messages me and says, hey, we just had our second meeting with our group, and we're blown away at how well we've been able to connect online. Our prayer session may have been one of the most meaningful sessions of prayer we've had in our group yet. And so it was so cool to see the transformation in about a month of they wouldn't even meet me over video to now they're telling me how awesome their group experience is. It's not better than what they've had in person, but they had some meaningful experience over that online period. So it was encouraging for us.
Yeah. So there was like, there it is, those quick changes. And so I remember I was going away for the weekend right before this all happened, and we kind of saw it happening. And I asked a friend, I said, hey, what do you think about doing online groups? Oh, I don't want to do those. On Sunday, everything had changed. I says, what do you think now? He goes, oh, I'm totally going to do it. So just that mindset. So we've got this incentive that's out there. And what's interesting is people ask about senior adults, and all of our senior adult groups are online except one. And we'll see, and that was more of a leadership type issue that was going on with them. But 3/4 of them are already meeting online before we even started our groups. And we were coaching them and helping them with some of those different pieces. But here's the other interesting thing in this time is that the nerds, and I use that in an affectionate way, or the geeks, the computer geeks that were always so far ahead of the rest of us, right? And all the rest of us are here, and they get annoyed with us and we get annoyed with them, and suddenly they have this ministry that they never realized that they have, and their incentive isn't annoyance, it's now they can help because they know this is a really need. And these people over here, being us, are open to please help us and to figure out how to do this. And so that's been a really awesome thing. So a couple of the key things as we went into this is our goal is to be shepherds right now. What is the church? What are the issues that were going on when we saw this? Well, there's a health issue. We're not going to be doctors, but we can care and pray for you. There's a financial issue. We're not going to pay people's mortgages, but we might need to help with groceries or those kinds of things. So we worked really quickly on how do we resource people in that need. And groceries really hasn't been, the food isn't the issue. The hoarders are toilet paper is an issue, but I think we can work around that. But his finance is so tight that we can't, somebody's not going to be fed. And so we want to pay attention to that. But the third one is isolation. And that is what the church can do and help. And so that's what we were focusing on in doing it. And one of the things we go, okay, we need to do this fast, but fast does not mean lacking strategy or patience. And so there are some certain steps to take, and we're saying we've got to be able to train our key people and get them the resources out there to be able to offer them that. And so as we look at our people, we've got your classic early adopter, middle adopter, and late adopters, which is a mentality different people have, but then there's also skills involved in that too. People that can learn skills quickly and people that are much slower in skills. So we focused our training on the middle adopters and not just focused on the late adopters, because we feel like they're going to jump in as we continue to show success and they're going to go Yahoo. And so that was one of our key pieces of understanding change in the midst of this. Now, we all have heard people hate change, right? But if you told everybody right now you're going to give them $5,000 more a month, and your own personal incentive, not the national incentives that are coming out, everybody would go, I like that change. We're really into that. And so that's a little bit what we have going on with online groups. People want to get connected. Sure, some people are resistant, but for the most part, it's like, okay, how do we do that? And most people, we believe, actually have looked at a phone and done some kind of FaceTime at some point in their life. Whether they dialed or not, someone has. So there is this what we have found, there's a higher competency out there than we realized. And we launched our groups last week, and we've got over 7,000 people in groups. I think it's a crazy amount, and we're expecting to get calls like crazy on help us, we can't get online, all of that. We have gotten some calls, of course. If we didn't get any calls, then we've not done a good job. But it's been only very, very few people that have pushed back on that. And actually, again, they've made that switch and key pieces there. So our goal, again, for success is not to get everybody online, but to make sure people are cared for and make it easy for those that are able to get online. One of the questions there, I think it says about Zoom is
security.
What's that?
The security issues. Kind of, I think maybe good to answer. So why we chose Zoom. So I did share a link down in the bottom in the chat, which you can grab and take a look at. So we did not say, hey, you have to use Zoom. In fact, that's one of our principles too, is we wanted to focus on the mission and not the method. So care is our highest primary focus and connection right now. So any way they can stay connected, we want to encourage them to do that. We chose as a team, we felt like from our research that Zoom was the best that we felt like would work for us. And we chose that. I've had about 3 years experience using that. And then it's the number one thing used in the business context. And so in different businesses, their support systems are huge. And so we felt like we didn't want to choose one that we had never heard of, because if it crashed, then all of our training would be out the window. When we used Google Hangouts, once it got over about 6 people, we started to see some issues on connectivity and the number of people you could have on a screen. But there's some pluses to Google. So I saw the note down there. So if you look on that link that I shared, there's pros and cons to each one. We don't think Zoom's perfect either. What we have enjoyed about Zoom in the last couple of weeks, they've made a lot of new updates. In fact, I see some new things on my screen that I haven't seen before. So there's some cool things on here. The security feature, when you're hosting, Dave, you can kind of talk about, I love the way you talk about the 3 different types of fears when it comes to that. So why don't you hit that, and then we can circle back to security.
This happened the other day. Remind me of the fears. So, about, what was it again?
The Zoom, you got Zoom bombers, which
right. You got Zoom bombers. So people that will break into your meeting. And if you put a password on there, you're fine. That's or the hackers or whatever. I kind of want a bomber to see it happen. I would like to experience that so I can relate and have empathy to my people, but that's a different personal issue. And then you have your telemarketers. People are they're collecting our information. If anybody is online anywhere, that's happening. That's Facebook. I mean, it's everywhere. So that's the logarithms thing. And then is the government watching you? Are you afraid of that? And I'm like, no, I'm not. And so close friends work for, if I mention their companies, all of you know them. They're famous around the world. They use Zoom. And I went right to them. I said, hey, what do you think? You use Zoom? We go, this is nothing new. The Zoom the security issues are nothing new with Zoom. Because I don't think any of your groups are going to have any more high confidential information than what we're doing with as far as marketing around the world, our product, etc. So it's a little bit like, it's like there's no perfect solution. So we don't even get in an argument with people of like whether we should or not. Oh, hey, use whatever you want. Here's what we're going to use. This is what we're recommending, but you can use whatever you want. We just kind of dispel it, and it's not been an issue for us. So that's the answer.
You probably know, if you've used Zoom, when you're the host, there's a security button down on the bottom that you can create waiting rooms. You can lock the room. You can prevent people from sharing. So that you can password protect. All those things help tremendously. So again, that was kind of why we went with Zoom. We felt like the connectivity worked good, the number of faces on the screen, and we chose not to do mass communications to all of our people, like acknowledging all the security issues. We felt like the number was smaller of the people that were raising questions about security features, so we didn't want to like spook the rest of the church, and so we just addressed them offline.
That's like me saying, hey, everybody, most people get broken into their house at some point in time. We don't need to communicate all that. We said be smart online and have a little phrase there, because that should be true. Use passwords and whatever your platform recommends. The other great thing about Zoom is as a call-in function. I see that question down there, and it works. And you can call in, and even if you get bad, the video shuts down, you can stay in audio, but then you can also call it in. And so we have people that are calling in, and there are a group of people that are not online, and that's difficult. Senior adults, we're mailing our questions out to them, so they don't have to print them. So one of the things that we're saying to our groups is print out your questions for your group ahead of time. People, the first time they get on, they won't think about that, and suddenly it's like, where is that? But that's normal. That's what they normally do anyway. So that's one of those processes there. I see that question there.
The other thing is Dave mentioned this earlier, but we chose our training and our resources focused that middle 50%, middle 80%. So the late adopters and early adopters, we kind of just said, we're going to forget about them for the moment. And then one of the things we quickly learned is that we had to become problem solvers at problems we had never faced before. Probably like each of you, none of us have seen this before. So then that 15% of people that maybe don't have internet, aren't tech savvy, don't have a web camera, we said, okay, we're not going to let the rest of our training be impacted by that. So we went ahead and made our trainings. And then this other 15% over here, we really focused our energy more one-on-one, more care. How do we help this individual, group leader or group, and that, which is why we chose to mail those out. We even offered to give web cameras to some of our seniors. So again, we just explored those options, and we didn't let the few people that were impacted by that impact everybody else going forward.
So to hit on those, to kind of overview now those 5 points, is communicate to your church. I mentioned that Chris sent out a couple videos right away. But one is what's going to be normal. We're going to, one is we're going to be the church. We're going to offer these our messages on the weekend. Our children's ministry is working at doing that, and youth ministries also. And our groups you're going to still meet in your group. He says, because the groups are the church. That's what it means. The church is not a building. It's people gathering together, committed to Jesus, and help one another walk with one another and reaching others for Jesus. He says, we're going to continue to do that. So he set the vision for us. He says, hey, you might have some people in your group that need help with groceries. Help them. Again, he didn't tell them to pay their mortgage, but it's like you might need that, and be paying attention to information as we communicate how to do that. So that was that step one. Step two was communicate and train your staff and leaders and hosts, was our second piece. And so you know how long I've been using Zoom? 4 weeks. So I knew nothing, and our team knew nothing. But so we needed to create a new skill and competency. But actually, it's not just for groups. It's also pastoral care. It's pastoral counseling. I mean, there's crises are not still happening, right? So how do you communicate that? And so in my mind, I said our team has to be highly competent in how to use Zoom. And there's a difference from being on a Zoom and actually starting a Zoom meeting. There's a significant difference in that. And so, and I didn't even know that. My friend, and we went on with our first one and with my group, and he goes, so do you know how to use Zoom? I'm like, sure. I'm a great problem solver. I did not know how to use Zoom at all. but I learned it quite quickly. And so I started meetings with my team. We just started doing Zoom. We started doing breakout rooms, all those different things, and trying stuff. And so that was our step one. Our step two was set for our staff to set up with their leaders of their groups, Zoom, 3 different meetings over the week's period of time. Hey, if you don't know how to use this, come meet me. Here's 3 different time slots that you can jump in and meet with us to learn the skill of how to do a group, and or just how to be on Zoom. Actually, we already taught them the skills on how to do groups, which I'm going to come back to. So there's really 2 skills that we were working on that a leader needs: how to lead a group, and then how to do online. And how to lead a group in person is really the same online. So what we wanted to do is make sure we're focusing on how to help them to do groups online. And that's what we communicated to our leaders. The first thing is we said, how are you doing? And check with your people on, see how they're doing. And don't worry about going online. Communicate to them however you normally communicate. Because again, our goal isn't to get everybody online, it's to keep people, shepherd people, and care for them. 2 is start to get trained on how to do online groups. Here's our recommendation: use Zoom. Here's some times to meet with our staff to go online, and here's a tutorial that we set up. And if you look through that webpage that Philip saw you'll see he does a how to use Zoom. You can steal it and use it if you already don't have one of those. But we found that helps to have it personalized to your team, and so he took people through that. But then third piece was, if you still don't know how to, check with your leader of your group, or if you don't know how to do it, check with a techie person in your group. And this is what we think happened. We think techie people came out of the woodwork to help out, because most groups have one person that is techie. If you're 30s or below, they're all at a high competency level, almost every one of them. And so that's how we were working it out. Then we said, if you don't have any of those, we are so available, contact us. So I told all of our pastors, guess what? You guys now are the IT department. People are gonna contact you and make it happen. And I have a pastor that we were like, man, we don't know. That's just not his thing at all. And we teamed another staff person with them. And it was so fun to see even he was able to gain that competency. And so some of those key pieces have been the Zoom has helped with that. But we teamed him up with someone else so he could still play pastor, but have someone else to be able to interject in that. So again, kind of shifting the ministry model of what we were used to do. So 3 important, so that's how we set it up in training our people. So one of the questions that people ask is, well, what do you do to train your leaders? What's their job? And this is important because this is the part where what is a leader's role in a group? And so how we define, part of it has to be is, well, how do you define a great group meeting? How do people grow spiritually? Well, we talk about gathering people together, connect them to God and one another, and they will grow. So it's kind of how your definition of spiritual growth is. And our leader's role is to be, in a sense, a facilitator, a person that gathers people together to be able to connect with one another. That's the difference on the weekend. So what we would say is a successful meeting before online and now online is hear from everybody every meeting and keep God's word at the middle. So like if a leader comes up to us and says, wow, man, the typical answer of what is a great meeting, new insight in scripture, somebody cries, somebody confesses a sin, great dessert, all these different things that are there. But those things don't happen every week. So does that mean it wasn't a good meeting? Or if they do happen, is it a good meeting? And frankly, it may not be if someone shares a spiritual insight, if it's the same person every week. Or if they're not hearing from everybody every week, then we've got a problem. And the enemy has got some really subtle things here about how he wants to render our people powerless. First is sin and addiction. We all get that. That's pretty simple. But the other 2 are what are the subtle, because the enemy is the master deceiver, the angel of light, right? And one is he wants to make people's faith complicated. He wants your people and your churches to think they need to know the Bible as well as you do, and now they will be spiritually arrived. He wants their goal to just know the Bible. And all of you, your competency is so much higher than the general person in your church. Now, I know you might have some brains on the stick that can be better at it than you, but that's not our goal. Our goal is to help people to follow Jesus no matter where their giftedness are in understanding all the different pieces of Scripture. And so that's not the goal. The goal is follow Jesus, live that out. And now God's word is vital to us. And we're always working with Larry and Chris to try to keep their sermons under 50 minutes and dig into it and all that. So the Bible is super important to us. But the enemy wants to make your faith complicated. But here's the third one. And this is the subtle one. And I think the church needs to pay big attention to this. He wants to keep people isolated. Every person that I know that has fallen away from Jesus, it's always been or started with lack of relationship or bad relationships. There's a verse in Scripture that says, bad company corrupts good morals. And that's a great junior high, a high schooler verse, right? It's like, that's why you need to have good friends and all that. But it's not written to junior hires and high schools. It's written to adults. And I really realized that when I was a junior high pastor, and I went to, I had a junior high parents meeting, and I met all the junior high parents. And then I knew why the junior hires were the way they were, because we're all a bunch of grown-up junior hires, right? I mean, that's really what it's true. And if you say no, you just proved our point once again, because it's relationships. And what Paul is doing in that 2 Corinthians passage, 15:33, he's addressing a theological problem. He's saying, hey, people are questioning the resurrection of Jesus. But he says, guess what? Bad company corrupts good morals, guys. You need to stay. So he's got a relational, not just a theological, but a relational solution to what's going on. Now, is my stat of people I've always known has been lack of relationship, why they've fallen away from Jesus? Is that 100% true? I'm sure it's not. It's just only true in my life. I've just never seen that. Opposite of that. It's always been that. And it's just so powerful. I think the enemy loves our people to think that church is the weekend. Church is listening to you or whoever your teaching pastor is preach and worship. And that's it. And because then they're going to go home and they're not going to read their Bible. They're not going in when are they going to talk about the message? When is all that going to happen? Well, that's what relationships, Hebrews 10:24 and 25, don't forsake meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, and encourage. And so that's why I do think there's an opportunity for wherever your church is at to heighten the importance of relationship. So whatever level, if you're full-on groups, if you're partial groups, or you're thinking about going, it's a chance to create new kinds of connections on that. And your people are hungry for it, and the enemy's worried about it. He's worried about it because we're redefining what the church is in the midst of this. And so I think that's one of the things that could be a big plus that could come out of it. I don't know what it all is, but all I know is our people need to be shepherded. So that's what we've had before our leaders. And so we told our leaders, what's going to be normal in your group? You're going to lead them in discussions. How do you train your leaders to deal with problems? We just say, ask 4 questions. Because our leader's role is to not be advice givers, but to be question askers. And the 4 Qs, and if you train your leaders to do these 4 Qs, they will be able to deal with any issue they ever encounter with your people. And it's also one of the reasons they don't want to lead. And this is it. The first one is, how long has this been going on? If someone is fighting with their spouse, having problems with their kids, dealing with depression, dealing with porn, dealing with suicide, I don't know what it is, but when they come and tell you that, or me that, my first, how long has this been going on? So then right, you get context. Wow, this has been going on for years, weeks, whatever, just since COVID, since stay at home. Second question is, who else knows? Now you find out if you're the first person they're ever sharing this with, or they have other people. Because one individual is not necessarily, we're not built to be everybody's support system, but how to bring a support system around them. That's the leader's role. Third question is, have you got any counsel on this? Have you got any big time advice on this? And fourth one is what do you want to do from here? Do you want some help? Because if they don't want any help, we can't make them. We can't help. We can't force our help on people. Here's why we tell our leaders, here's what's going to happen if your leaders ask that question. Most of them are going to know what to do. They're going to go, wait a minute, I don't know how to deal with this. And what we tell them is, if you have an issue you can't deal with, call us. We never want you to have to deal with something you can't handle. or they're going to know what to do. And most people that are in leadership know what to do at that point. Call for help or be able to help that person. Because if they're in leadership, they're the top 20% anyway. We oftentimes treat leaders like followers. But if we give them those 4 questions, the enemy wants us to wants the leader to think, I got to tell them what to do. And we're like, no, just ask them questions. Help bring it out. Help build that connection in that relationship. Show that empathy. Show that you're there to able to come alongside and help understand them that. So we're still driving that at our leaders online. You're still asking the same questions in the midst of that. Because here's what happens is when they call us and tell us they have an issue that they're dealing with their leader, we're going to ask, what 4 questions are we going to ask them? If Philip comes to me and says, hey, I've got a leader dealing with this, what do I ask you, Philip?
Yeah. So when I started, I know the 4 questions. So I would go, all right, Dave, how do we handle this? And he would start asking me the 4 questions. And then I would go, I didn't ask the 4 questions. I got to go back. And so it took me like 2 or 3 times. I guess I'm a little stubborn to go, I'm not going to ask Dave unless I ask the 4 questions. So it was a great learning experience for me. So we use it with each other. It works really well.
And then our response is, and then it's a, I go, we go, you go. In other words, is this a you go, you can deal with that? We've talked about it with the leader. Or is this a we go, we both need, I can walk with you in this. Or is this an I go? It's as far above their pay grade or skill level. I need to jump in and handle that issue. So that's a sense. Those are how we train our leaders and how coming alongside them. And we have a new leader essentials training packet. If you guys are interested in that, shoot us a text on that, and we can give you a COVID 50% off discount for that if that's something interesting. Not marketing, just a piece for you guys there. It helps as that's been super helpful for us. It's video. You can make it your own, etc. All of that goes with it. So that's how we began to train our leaders and get them going. And again, our leaders already knew how to do groups. Any new people we brought on, which were a few, not many. We didn't launch many groups. We had half as many people sign up this quarter that we normally do in spring, which is we expected that. And checking around the country, the signups are not this overwhelming big thing. So it's not necessarily a chance to launch your groups for the first time. It really depends on your capacity too. If you don't have many groups and you have full isolation, I think your need and your congregation's desire is going to go up. So your chance to be able to add more groups is going to increase more than us. We're at 90%, so we're highly saturated. So we didn't expect this big extra sign up that was going to happen with us. Anything to add to that, Philip?
Yeah, I would say where we did see some increased connection is not necessarily from new people we had never met or never heard of and didn't know they attended our church. We saw increased connection in our groups. So let's say I have a group of 10 people, somebody moved away, or I have a group of people where their kids' babysitter wouldn't allow them, or they had a sporting event or whatever it was that wouldn't allow them to meet on that particular night. We definitely saw increased connection among relationships in those groups. And so we'd be like, oh, we could add so-and-so back, and this couple can join. So we saw that in a lot of across the board, even from young marrieds and young families all the way up to empty nest and seniors. So we saw that across the board.
Yeah, I want to make sure I was being clear on that too, in that if you don't have groups and your people and this is going on for a lot longer than we think, I think there is a need there that your people are going to want to respond to that. And because they don't have the normal connection that is there. So I think there is is it a great new evangelistic opportunity to reach people that have never been to church? I don't think that's the big over the top piece that's out there right now, but if it does, it's great. But we're seeing most of the people that are part of the church regularly are looking, okay, how do I get connected and how do I make that happen? The challenge will be launching groups during this time of year. Spring is always our toughest or our smallest signups and our least attended quarter because of just spring, the way life works. And so we shortened our quarter. We end in May. What are we going to do in summer? We don't meet in the summer. We typically tell groups you can still meet. So we'll provide some kind of, if this goes on through June, July, wow, wouldn't that be crazy? We'll definitely be doing something of some kind of connections and groups in that way, which we would not normally do. But we're just going week by week at this point.
So question from David is what's biggest problems we run into? I think a couple of them when it comes to groups. I know work with our young families, and so normally they meet from 7 to 9 or 7:30 to 9. And so one of the biggest challenges has been now they have kids, they're homeschooling, they're home all the time, and it's a new reality. So we're really having to help groups and almost on an individual basis really problem solve their specific group. So I was on a Zoom call with a leader yesterday, and so they're having to tag out, the husbands meet for an hour, then the wives meet for an hour. So we're having to help them problem solve what their group looks like. It could be that they shift the meeting schedule later. They change it to a different day. So again, there's different things you can try. And part of this is some of their expectations as leaders are too high because they just came out of a quarter where they met in their home and everybody had babysitters. And so they had this great experience. And so they took a 3-week break and now they're back in and they're like, okay, now it's week 1 of our quarter and they're expecting to have the same level of connection and distraction-free environment. So I'm having to help lower their expectations a little bit. It's like, okay, let's give your members a little bit of grace. It's not going to be the exact same as it was 3 weeks ago. And so by lowering those expectations, it's taking some of the frustration out. I always think if your expectations are here and your reality is here, the difference between the two is your frustration gap. So we either have to raise reality of their group experience or lower their expectations. So I try to do both. And so try to encourage them to lower their expectations and then just give them some coaching points on how to raise up that reality. Again, changing the time, shortening the meeting. I shared a great article today on my social media that I read that when you're in Zoom, your focus is so heightened, you're staring at a video screen that our attention spans are shorter than they are in person. And so I think it makes a great case for a shorter meeting time. So we're encouraging our groups. They can still meet the 2 hours if they want, but they may meet for 60 minutes or 90 minutes. And I think that 90 minutes has been a little bit more of a sweet spot. So again, just helping them get in a good rhythm, lower their expectations, and just give, the first time, if you've been on a Zoom call for the very first time or you led one for the first time, it is clunky. And so I'll share a link in a minute. We called our pro tips. And so we created a video that's intended to be funny. I don't know if it's funny or not, but I think there's a little bit of humor in it, but it just kind of pokes fun at the fact that the first time you're on there's all kinds of crazy stuff that happens in a Zoom call. And so it's okay to go with it. And so we shared some pro tips in our leader guide. I'll put the link in there. But again, just trying to encourage them that your first meeting is going to be a little clunky. Your second meeting is going to be a little better. And by the third or the fourth, you're going to start to level out a little bit. And we're starting to see that. So that was a big problem we saw early on.
Our big message that we do, and I did it again this week, is your first meetings are going to be clunky, clunky, clunky. But we also talk about everybody's experiencing that, but we have continued to see extreme success. And you got to continue to send both of those messages. Accept reality, acknowledge reality, but go, guess what? There's a great piece on the other side. So that's been a key piece here. Yeah, we had our pro tips, and it was like the 3 Ps of meeting online. Again, you can create that and do that in a variety of ways.
Couple things too. We used on a lot of our videos, we used QuickTime Player. I had never used it before. And so there's a screen capture and you could just record your screen. So we would do some of our trainings. There's some training videos that I did. I literally recorded my screen and talked through it a couple times. And then you can upload that to YouTube or Vimeo and then share it as a link. So that's there's other free versions you can use, but you can use that. And that worked really well. So some of those videos you'll see, that's what we used was QuickTime Player. We didn't have like professional videographers doing that for us. Like we did that. I'm not a videographer by any means. So we use that. One of the other things that we learned too, we're having to train our leaders. When you facilitate a conversation on a video is far different than when you do it in person. And so you have to be a little bit more direct, a little bit more forceful. I typically would ask a question if I'm in my living room and then just kind of let it sit and let people answer it. And kind of work around the room. I now have to call on people. So we use last night in my own group, we either use like a phrase we call pass the baton. And so it's like if once I ask the question, I'll say, okay, Dave, here you go. And then Dave will say, okay, Tim, here you go. And so we're calling on the next person. We call it popcorn. So again, just giving them little tips like that. That's helpful because if you've asked a question in a Zoom meeting and then like if I just threw a question out right now, I guarantee 8 of us would try to answer at the same time. We'd all start talking and then we all stop. And then we all start talking again. And then we'd be like, this is chaos. So again, giving them little tips, it's different. And so, again, just encouraging your leaders, just you're going to have to lead a little bit more in those meetings. That's going to be super helpful.
Yeah, putting on the chat our leaders guide. And so we're kind of the next one is we do a leaders guide every week. And so we write our sermon-based questions. They'll be due on Thursday. And then we create a leaders guide is like how some extra questions beyond that. And so we've got some tips in there every week. And so when we started, we're like, well, we can break into rooms. We had about 3 or 4 things we wanted to train our people to do. And we're like, you know what? They just need to meet. They just need to figure it out. So these first 3 weeks is just clunky. Next week, we're going to show them how to do breakout rooms. We hinted at it last week, but then this week now we're going to say, hey, here's how you do breakout rooms. And then the 4th week, we're encouraging them to do socials. So we're working on a couple tutorials using QuickTime, which is, it doesn't need to be pro because everybody's super gracious right now, of games that they can play and hang out. My family did Yahtzee, and we were in 3 different states and this Easter, and it was just the best. And so again, we're trying to create a variety of ways for interaction with our people. And we kind of do the popcorn. You call, like Philip was saying, call on one person and they'll go to the next. So one of those keys of hearing from everybody all the time.
Dave, will you run through just kind of a quick overview of our training, kind of our training platform or paradigm, whatever you want to call that, of how
Got it.
And then how we contextualize it?
Right, yeah. One of the questions that we always get asked is, well, how do you train your leaders overall? Which again applies in this setting. So it's what we would call, it's a 1, 3, 30, 24/7. And let me explain what those numbers are. Philip will probably type them in as we go here. 1 is new leader training. We ask all of our leaders to go through the new leader training that we do. We do that a few times a year. We also have it online that they're able to look at that, and it gives them, here's your purpose, here's your reason, here's how to deal with problems, here's how to have a meeting with your people that's successful. We ask them to do for that one time. Then we say there's 3 that's the one time you don't need to repeat it. There's 3 trainings a year we want you to go to. Only one of them is going to be out of your normal schedule, and that's the one in the fall. It's what we call our kickoff. That's for just leaders and hosts, not participants. And it's a commissioning pep rally to get going. And fall is always our largest time of signups. And so that can be thing from a barbecue in a backyard, depending on the size of your church and your belief in people and commissioning them, to a massive event which we do, that's involved worship and skits and all those kinds of things. But it's been at all different levels through the years here. That's one of the 3. The other 2 would be what we would call mid-quarter trainings, and they meet during weekend services. And so that way we have childcare taken care of. There's two things that we feel are essential in every leadership training we do: free childcare and food. If you don't provide free childcare, that meetings can cost them anywhere from $30 to $80. And so you don't want your trainings to cost money for your volunteers. That's a key piece in that. So that's why we will offer it during weekend services, because childcare is already set up. When we began to grow, we all of a sudden realized we were didn't have room in one of our room during one of the services, and we had to opt to do multiple services. Well, when we started opting to do multiple services, as a leader, I wanted everybody in the room. Our people loved it, though, because they didn't need to change what service they were attending. They didn't have to move their kids to a different service, and it gave them multiple times if they have stuff to come up. So we do those twice. We'll do one in late fall and one sometime in the winter, spring quarter on the weekends. So that's the 3. We do a kickoff event and then 2 what we would call mid-quarter trainings. And what's involved in what's that?
Just add one more thing before you jump on that. Those mid-quarter trainings. So even our smallest campus is just over 100 people. So they don't have the space to be able to do that building wise. So they adjust their time slot. Not all of them meet during the service. So we have some campuses that are portable. So again, each campus is a little bit different based on size, based on rooms, all that kind of stuff.
Room availability.
Maybe Friday night, maybe Sunday afternoon. So again, they move them around based on what works for their context.
Here's the content of those mid-quarter training meetings is that we're not training them all the time how to be a small group leader. That's really a lot like tying a shoe. Once you got it, you got it. There's reminders, of course, that we do, but it's the, what is it? The 4 I's. We inspire, tell a story, we inspect. Hey, how's it going? What's going well? What's not going well? We instruct, begin to give them some kind of leadership type principles. And we inform any key information that they need to have. And there's always, it's part of a meal. You know, we'll do pizza at night, we'll do some simple breakfast in the morning, and we'll do that right in those meetings. So that's the mid-quarter training. So you got the 1, the new leader training, then you've got the 3, those are the 3 times we do every year. We just ask you to come to 3 meetings over a whole year's period of time. And then the next one is 30. And, you know, what is 30? Well, we meet for 3 quarters, 10 weeks each quarter, and we provide a leader's guide for every week that they meet with their groups. And it's not a required piece that they need to do, but it is something that can help them lead their group from week to week. And we have found, we've done this since day 1. It used to be a cassette tape back 34 years ago when we started groups. And obviously we're not doing any of that, transferred into CD and online and all that, but now it's podcasts. And we were just audio for years. And what that leader's guide is, it's how whoever writes the homework would lead the group that week. Let me give you an example. If I gave each of you 3 questions to lead your group in, each of you would probably have another 5 to 10 questions that you would automatically come up with because of your competency and as a pastor and as a groups person or just understanding group dynamics. That's all the leader's guide is. So if I write the questions this week, I'm going to add those 3 to 5 questions that I automatically come up with. Some of you might say, oh, I don't come up with them. Like, yes, you do. Otherwise, or you're not a very good small group leader. And you're like, oh, I shouldn't, then maybe that's not you. But we all do. And some of us are what we would call an unconscious competent. I think Larry uses that term sometimes, is that we have that ability. So be able to put those questions on there. So we offer those questions every week. Here's how to take your group further. There's some tips and abilities to do that. That's that link that I sent to you a little bit earlier. Here's what's interesting to this. Years ago, when I came into this role, we had about 30% of our people were taking the CDs at that point. And I asked a leader, high competent guy, hey, do you use a leader's guide? He said, oh yeah, every week. I was like, it didn't make sense to me. Why would he? And I go, why do you use that? You don't really need it, because he knows how to come up with his own questions. He says, Dave, I'll quit if you stop using that. I'm like, wait a minute, what? You don't need it. He goes, I, like everybody you asked to lead, is busy. I'm busy. They're all busy. And it's a key tickler file for me to be able to orient to what's going on. It also helps us as writers fix bad questions that we write, because we're writing on the fly. The 2 big challenges that we have at North Coast as small groups people is writing questions every week, because we don't know what the sermon is on. We got an idea, but not exactly. So we're writing without an outline, believe it or not, we are. And recruiting leaders. Those are the two biggest pieces. So when this leader told me about this leader's guide, I'll quit if you quit writing, I'm like, wow, I'll never not do it. A year later, we turned it into a written guide also. Since that time, that I believe was 15 years ago, we have 70% of our leaders accessing that guide every week. We just checked it again last week, and it's right there at that same number. We checked it last in fall, it's right at that same number. And because it's a key tickler file, so that's the 30. It takes extra time, but you talk about discipleship and leadership and influence, and I get to step in the living room with all these different churches or leaders and groups. Whoever's writing that week gets to do that, and it's just an amazing privilege to do that and really help our leaders. So that's the 30. And then the last one is 24/7. It's what we would call on-demand coaching. If you have a problem you can't handle, call me. And that's what I talked about, asking the 4 Qs. We just want you to ask these 4 Qs. There's a lot of ministries out there that say everybody needs a coach, and everybody doesn't need me to assign them a coach. All people are all leaders of equal value, but they all don't need equal attention. And so it's like for everybody to be under a coach doesn't make sense. If you all moved to North Coast in San Diego and became a leader, I would assume none of you need a coach. I might want you to help coach somebody, but everybody doesn't even need a coach, and everybody doesn't have time to be a coach. So we do that 24/7. So it's 1-3-30, 24/7. That's our training model to be able that we offer to our leaders. And we have just found it has outstanding success. Every one of my leaders, I give my cell phone. People are worried, are they going to call you all the time? No, they're not, if you train them right. And I don't train them on all the issues in the world. I just say, your goal is not to answer everybody's questions and give the insight. It's to give them support in life's issues and find out what it is. Just ask these questions, care for them, and call us when you need us. We'll help you. So our team, what we do is, I don't even tell our whole team to meet with all, we meet with all of our leaders face-to-face when we recruit one time. And then from then out, we say what we call it 5 touches a week. I want our staff, like Philip's, like, Philip, you have to have 5 touches a week. And so over 5 weeks, you'll have 25 touches with 25 different leaders, because all your leaders don't have time to meet with you. They don't even want to meet with you. You mean you're cool, but we're not all that cool. Philip, you want to speak into that a little bit?
Yeah, no, that's good. And I mean, if you think about it, 5 touches a week over a year, let's call that times 50, that's 250 touches. You're going to touch every single one of your leaders. And by touch, we mean it's a text, a phone call, an email, a video chat. It could be a coffee, but most of them are not a coffee or a lunch meeting together. A lot of mine are text. I have 54 groups that I work with. And in each of our groups, the goal is to have a leader couple and then a host couple. So that means 4 leaders per group. So that would be just over 200 leaders. I can text every one of those leaders in about 2 hours, and I send them individual texts, and I do some copy and paste, but again, I can get personalized text to them. And again, the connectiveness on that, and that pays dividends going forward. Do I do that every week? No, but at the start of our quarters, towards the end of our quarters, I'll hit every single one of them in a week. But then other than that, I'm hitting them, just 5 of them up. And so those relationships, because I'm new, I haven't even met face-to-face with every one of those leaders yet. I'm still working through, but the text and the phone calls have helped bridge connections, which have been awesome. So
when I came into this role, like I've not told our staff, I don't say, hey, are you meeting with all of your leaders one-on-one? But I do ask the question, is there someone that you need to meet with? So it's who are your 5 touches? And let me add that little piece to what a touch is. It's a contact that you wouldn't normally have with someone, that shows you're thinking about it. Your leaders aren't asking you to be their best friend. They're asking if you're available in crisis or if they need you. And when we contact someone when they don't expect it, it shows that you actually are thinking about them. So that's why that text, that email, that phone call, and having coffee if you want, that's great. It says, not because you need them to go to a meeting, not because you want to get a referral from them and how to recruit a leader. It's that I care about you. I'm just checking in and seeing how you're doing. One of my staff said, yeah, I see my leaders on the weekend. That's one of my touches. I'm like, oh, that's not a touch. He goes, wait, what are you talking about? I go, that's just being polite. As a leader, you better say hi to your people when you see them, right? That's expected. The non-expected is when they get a text in the middle of the day. Hey, I was thinking about how's your little league team doing that you're coaching? Praying for you today. That's meaningful. They don't even need it. Hey, doesn't need to be a big conversation, but the fact you thought about it in the middle of the day is kind of crazy. And so that's what we have found is key.
I would just say on that too, I doubt that I get a 50% response rate on those texts, but it's okay. It doesn't matter, because it's not about them responding back. I know they read it. The stats show over 90% of texts are read. So they're reading those texts. And then I know, because I'll get, when they may text me when they have an issue, and I'll look at the thread and I can see that I've texted them 4 or 5 times in the last couple months, but they know that they can reach me. They know I'm available. So again, I'm not saying I get 100% return rate. Don't feel insecure or bad if you don't. I think it's just the constant dripping of, hey, we're here, we're caring for you, we're praying for you, we're thinking about you.
And that helps when you do need to contact them, ask them for referrals. I know we need to wrap up. I'll just do the final piece, the final couple pieces here. Just take a minute or two. I've kind of hit on it. Make it simple for people to sign up for groups. You can do that in a variety of ways. You can set up you can just have people meet with a friend. You're going to miss a lot of people but at least that's getting something going. You can set up a Zoom room and say, okay, we're going to set this up and break into rooms. That's kind of random. We choose to have leaders to do that. And so you can set up who those leaders are and have them sign up in that process. And you can see what ours is. And you can ask us more about that too. Philip will drop my email in there along with his, if any other questions. And then I've hit on the providing weekly curriculum. It's just beautiful and how it continues to be meet on those relationships. We have that 10-week quarter. It starts with, hey, how you doing? Let's have, and it's greeting. It tends to be more upbeat. And then it goes through the quarter. We're going to plan socials. We're still doing service projects. How do you serve in the community and help? We've got links to that because there's all kinds of needs still out there. Masks, making masks has been one of them. And then you end the quarter saying, hey, what do you want to continue? How do you want to continue? And how did the group go? What was great? Is there anything you change? Every healthy relationship allows feedback, both positive and constructive, of things to change. And so that's one of the key pieces there. So those are our 5 things. I hope that is helpful, you guys. Is there any other questions that we just need to mention here? I want to be true to our time, and we can stay on for a little bit extra if for those of you that would like. If we need to end, we're good with that, or if you need to just exit.
Well, Dave and Philip, yeah, if you guys have any other questions, you guys can put them in the chat box. But I do want to wrap it up. If you want to stick around for a few minutes afterwards, that would be fine. But I want to say thank you so much to you guys. This was incredible material, so practical, so helpful. I want to let everybody else know on the call. I know a few of you are starting to hop off, but just bear with me for just a second here. You will get a link, follow-up email. You register for this. We have your email. We're going to send you an email link or a link rather to YouTube. We're going to post this on YouTube. Please feel free to share this with anyone on your team who might see this as helpful. We want to be a resource for you. And then just continue to lean on each other. This is the beauty of EFCA West. You know, as an example, we put a video out a couple days ago talking about a church in Albuquerque that needed help to get through the next few months. And within like an hour, that need was met by several churches in our district. So it's beautiful how we're working together, and North Coast is being part of our family. Is doing that same, giving us the same kind of gift as well. Want to also let you know that next week we're planning on having Dr. Buddy Mendez, who's a professor at Concordia University, to talk to us about dealing with trauma and stress in the church among our members, how to help our members deal with the stressful situation that they're in. I just want you to know the next few weeks for our Wednesday webinars, we're going to get pretty intense. We're going to be talking about this issue. We're also going to be talking about how are our women dealing with this in our church, and we want to hear from more of our female voices in the church and what's it like being at home. I know my wife, she's like, Tim, I feel like I'm making 17 meals a day. The kitchen is always open because the kids are like running, and she has to take care of everything, and I'm trying to help out, and it's fine, but it's tough being at home all the time. And that's really taxing on a lot of our ladies who are still working. And so how can we as pastors and leaders even help deal with some of these problems that are happening at home? And then we're looking at some other stuff as well that's going to be pretty intense, looking at even abuse and domestic violence in the coming weeks as well, and how we can serve our congregations and shepherd our flocks effectively. So again, thank you guys so much. If there are other questions, we will we'll stick around for a few minutes.
Another 5 minutes or so if you want.
Yeah, 5 minutes. But thank you so much, guys, and God bless, and continue to stay connected, fight the good fight here, and we'll see you next week.
Good job, guys.